So how do we create that systems culture? The first thing is, there's probably only about 3 tips, and some of these tips are for the integrator. You want to manage via the systems. So the system becomes both the problem and also the solution. Something happens in the business and there is a fire and something is going wrong, like metaphorically speaking, a fire, then the first thing that we do, we don't blame the team member if a mistake is made. We go to the system to find out, was it in the system? The system is always at fault. If we can, and you'll find in the early days, you'll have lots of issues that crop up and you'll just keep adjusting and pivoting and improving those systems, but then they'll reduce. And then you'll get nice, finely oiled systems with less and less fires over time. So you always default to it's the problem of the system, not the individual. You don't want to point the finger and say, oh, it's your fault that this or that didn't happen. It's always the system's fault. And then in that way, the system also becomes the solution as well. You're systematically fixing problems in the business. If you want something fixed, you don't go to the individual team member, you go to the system. Again, something Melissa taught me, which is rather than me going to the team member and saying, hey, I didn't like that email template that you sent through to the client, I don't think it was worded just right, that's not really helpful. I'm better off jumping into System Hub, tweaking the email template, so next time it's right. And once you create enough space, it's okay for you as the business owner to start working on the systems. Initially, and I talk a lot, all up until this point, I've very much said that you are the worst person to be working on systems. But there will come a point where if you create enough space for you, then it's some business owners and visionaries actually can work really well on systems. It's that working on it rather than in it. But you've got to first get out of it first before you can start really crafting those systems. So you're training people to look for that systems solution, always encouraging them to go back to wherever that knowledge base is and start with checking that out first. And all of this as well, that training and that indoctrination happens as part of the onboarding process. So you want to introduce this to the team member as early as possible. All of the onboarding and training needs to be referencing your wiki for where all of this information is, so then they get used to that's where I go for answer. Again, I can't say it enough, the resistance that you will get to the change in systems culture will come from your existing staff. But the longer that you're on this journey and as the team starts to change and you hire new people, it just gets easier and easier. And the last point here is that the business owner also needs to follow the rules. In the early days, felt like I was operating outside of the rules, and I would assign tasks via email, and I wouldn't be doing things in Asana, and I would escalate what I thought was important and what was urgent to me right now without any real thought on what was going on in the business. And Melissa said, it's a little bit like you're coming into our house where we have rules that you take your shoes off at the front door and you're wearing these muddy boots all the way through the house and you're knocking things over and you're making a mess, because it's okay when you're outside of the business to have your own way of doing things. As the visionary, I have a Christian who works very closely with me. He's almost like my personal assistant, and we have a different way of working. I'm rapid fire, I'm assigning things via emails, all these different platforms, but I'm not allowed to do that with the rest of the team. I just get to do it with Christian because he kind of, and Melissa also says I have a habit of, what's the nice way of putting it? I wreck team members. She basically said it's very hard for her if someone's worked with me. So we had a few instances where I've had my personal assistant then move into the rest of the organisation. And all of them, no exception, have not been able to properly integrate into the team because I've trained them the way that I work. And then it's almost like I've broken them. But when they're working with me, I've got a different way of working. So we want to support me to get the most out of me, but that doesn't support the rest of the team. So you just got to remember to take your shoes off when you get to the front door. And then the compliance goes back to the integrator. And if you build up this systems culture, then it makes it easier for your integrator to get compliance because they just say, well, this is the way that we do things. You haven't done it that way, great, okay, well, next time follow the system. And if it happens a few times where they've been nudged back to to look at the system and they still can't follow it, well then they're probably not the right fit. And what a much easier way to manage a team member, to say it's in black and white in our systems and processes if you can't find it. So you're actually making the job of your integrator a little bit easier.